while. Um, oh, perfect. I don't know who
Hmm.
just started that. Was that you, Cynthia?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Perfect. Okay, I'm Corey Sussman. I'm the graduate student liaison with NISCA. Uh, After speaking with a lot of the graduate students over at the NISCA conference in Syracuse this past month in November, we got to talking, and a lot of our students and graduate students are very confused about the new requirements for the graduating class of 2023 and beyond. I'm graduating in 2022, so there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion between my graduating class and the classes beyond my year. So spoke with Dr. Walley, who is the director at Mercy College and also a past president of NISCA. She thankfully was able to put up make a presentation for us, discuss with you the new qualification, new guidelines for graduates moving forward. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Walley. Once again, I'm Corey Sussman. I am the NISCA graduate student liaison. I'm also a graduate student at NYIT on Long Island, the Long Island campus. So I turn it over to Dr. Walley. Thank you so much, Dr. Walley, and I will see you in a little bit.
Okay, very good. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I have a small PowerPoint, but I thought that but also I wanted to use the bulk of the time to answer your questions after I go through my PowerPoint. It's very exciting, these regulations, but I also understand that there's a lot of anxiety related to them as well in terms of the information. And I find that sometimes getting things from the source, and although I'm not the source, but I've been heavily involved with the regulations since the very beginning of the changes. And so for our discussion today, we're going to learn about the changes regarding training related to the regulations, the new regulations. And also we're going to talk about the changes regarding certification because they go hand in hand with the training standards. And so as I was preparing for this discussion, I thought about it in terms of kind of like what Corey talked about, that he's different. He's graduating in 2022, but there's so many students who are in between that time. There are students who are graduating now, this December. There are students who are graduating next year. And then there's those students who are graduating in 2023. And so trying to make sure that I try to capture as many people as I possibly can with this presentation. So those who are on the lines are those who are graduating in May, August, or December, somewhere between now and May, August, and December of 22. Because of the fact that they were admitted prior to September 2021. But then we also have a group of students, those who are graduating May 2023 and afterwards, because they started somewhere around September 2021 as well. And so this also might apply to students who started the summer of 2021 as well. So trying to capture as many students as possible in this, but in general, these are the two different tracks that we're going to be speaking about today. So as I stated, I thought that it would be important to to inform you about how these regulations came to be. And so in 2024, we have the New York State School, NYSED, New York State Education Department had a school counselors summit in which they brought together all stakeholders, as many stakeholders from New York, to convene together for a few days to talk about what should be the training standards for school counselors and the certification standards for school counselors, and what should be the practice standards for school counselors. So we came together and we came up with recommendations, and those recommendations led to new regulation. So this was never in place before, about school counselor preparation, that focus on school counselor preparation programs. And then we also came updated regulations regarding Part 100 regarding school counseling practice, what happens within K through 12 schools within New York State. So for our discussion today, we're going to really keep it towards school counselor preparation programs. And so what the regulations stated, or what they did, was indicate to all programs within New York State, and there's about 40 school counseling programs within the state, as I last counted. And New York State, as stated, all school counseling programs had to re-register their programs with these new regulations. And so by re-registering, that meant that candidates, school counseling students, would either be being certified or prepared initially or professionally within their school counseling program, and that it's needed to start for the fall of 2021. So every program within the state this fall had to use their new program, their new registered program. And so some students might have came in right before that time, like I said, summer 2021. But in general, anyone who's enrolled in, if this is your first semester in your school counseling program, needed to, are going to fall under these new regulations. And I'm going to try to also kind of attend to the chat, but because I'm the only one doing this, I might not be able to get to the chat, any chat questions just yet, okay? So just give me a moment. And I am recording this, and this is probably going to be probably on the NYSCA website or the NYSCA YouTube page site as well. Let's see. And so what the regulations for preparation did is it made changes in the content area, making sure that there was some standardization across all programs within the state, that we were all going to cover 8 core areas. And those areas, we didn't necessarily have to recreate anything because the majority of all programs were already doing this work anyway. So it was things like human development, content related to multiculturalism, research, school counseling program development and evaluation, some of those standard courses that you take, that you've been taking, and that's part of your program right now. So that was no change. But then there was also, what was interesting about the regulation is the field experience, that it was very specific of making sure that there were direct experiences and indirect experiences that were that 40-60 split. And again, very similar to all the programs within the state, especially programs that are K-CREP accredited. So there was no difference there. The other thing that it required practicum, and it also requires internship. And this is different from the old regulations in the sense that there was no regulation about training. It just said an internship or a practicum, and it was very nondescript in terms of what was required within those experiences. And so this new regulation really gave a lot of detail about what should happen during the field experience for students in the school counseling program. The other thing that this new regulation did was say that because you are getting certified as a school counselor K through 12, you need your internship experience to incorporate those populations. So the regulation states that you have to have 300 hours, a minimum of 300 hours in a K through 8 setting, and 300 hours in a 9 through 12 setting. And it could be in the K through 8, it can be elementary or it can be middle school as your experience. But everyone in the state will all have a high school experience as part of their internship experience. And then again, this is only pertaining to individuals who are admitted into their program of study as of 2021. However, and there's some variations to that I won't get into unless there's a question asked about that. But anyone who's starting their program this fall, are falling under this new standard. The other interesting thing about the new regulations is that programs had an option of how many credits they wanted to register for. They could register for a 48 credit hour program, a 60 credit hour program, or a 48 plus 12 type of program where it's like an advanced certificate type of program. And every program made their own decisions based upon the needs of their program and the community needs as well. At Mercy College, we were a 48 credit hour program, and we chose to move to 60 credit hour program. But that variation will, like I said, varies across the state in terms of what people chose to do. If you were coming from a K-Prep program, you were already 60, so there wasn't much that those programs had to do. The other thing with the new regulation, is that there is going to be a school counseling exam that's going to be required as well probably after you complete your program of study. And they're currently working on the exam now with a tentative execution date, a tentative approximate time frame around like 2023, right? So that is something that is new and changing. If it's not available in 2023, you don't have to worry about it and, throw pennies in a lake and thank the gods that you don't have to do the exam just yet or ever, if it's not available in 2023 when you graduate. And so because of these new training standards, that also meant that certification standards changed as well. And so those certification standards are this, and this is what you're familiar with. So we have that group who started, like I said at the beginning, who started before fall of 21, and they're probably going to, if they're able to graduate before around 2022, they're going to fall under the provisional and permanent certification standards. If you started your program of study this fall, and or you're not going to be able to graduate before 2022, then you're probably going to fall within the initial and professional certification pathway. And so I'm going to get a little bit into details about that. So what the state stated or indicates is that they're going to issue provisional certifications all the way up until February 1st, 2023. And then after on or before February 2nd, they are going to be issuing initial and professional certifications only. If you don't get your information in, if you're interested in doing provisional and permanent pathway, you have to have all of your documents in and paid the fees before February 1st. You couldn't necessarily start the process on February 1st. You have to do it before then because you need to apply before that time frame and have everything completed. If not, you're going to find yourself in a pickle because you're going to be, because you're not going to meet the standards for provisional anymore, and you're not going to meet the standards for professional. So it's going to cause some hardship if you don't follow the guidelines for applying for your certification. And so if you're graduating, like I said, if you're graduating May, August, December of 2022, you can apply for your provisional certification as soon as possible. You have 5 years to use that certification, and then you get a job. You work for 2 years as a full-time counselor, and then you apply for your permanent certification. You can complete additional coursework that leads to permanent, or by completing the remaining coursework as a non-matriculated candidate and apply for your permanent certification through a transcript evaluation. So that's for those who are going to be graduating in May, August, or December of 2022. It's very important that you understand that there's nothing that you have to do except complete your program of study and make sure you apply for your certification as soon as possible so that you don't fall through the cracks in this particular process. So a thought that I had was I was curious about where you are in the process. are you a student who started before and you're going to be graduating, sometime within 2022, or are you a student who you're going to be graduating in 2023? And I think that's really important for you to determine where you are at right now in this process, because if you are a student if you're going to graduate in 2022, there's nothing for you to do. You're just going to proceed as normal. But if you're a student that you're unsure about your status, then you really need to speak with your faculty advisor, a faculty member at your college, and determine what is going to be best for you and what's feasible in the time frame that you have left to be able. Are you going to be able to finish your program by the end of December 2022, or are you not going to be able to finish your program, including practicum and internship, by 2022? Otherwise, you might have to, go on to or switch to the new program at your school. So that's just something to kind of think about in terms of where you are in the process. So the exam is very specific to New York State, so it's not leading to any type of, it's not a Pearson exam, it's not coming from NCC or NBCC. This is something that the state of New York is developing, similar to teacher preparation programs and EdTPA. So it's very specific. To be able to get your initial certification, you're going to have to complete this exam in order to get that initial certification as a school counselor.
Can I ask a question?
So if you have a question, I think the best way, I think I heard two people. Can you just do the raise your hand feature, then I'll call on you? That might be a little bit easier for me to kind of see. Yeah. So if you have a question, and I'm coming down to the part where I have to say, are there any questions? So I think I have 2 more slides. So if you can just bear with me just a second. And so, so it was in one slide. Any questions, right? And I purposely didn't want to overwhelm, because I can definitely speak on this for a very long time. But I think what I understand is that there is confusion between, am I this or am I that? Or what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? Can I stay in my program and just do this, or should I just graduate and get my certification? So I know there's a lot of different questions related to that. And so if you have a question, raise your hand, and then I'll just call on you, and I can just spend the rest of the time answering questions. So Caitlin.
Hi.
Hi.
So I graduated actually this year. So I got my provisional, but did you say there were requirements for, so like I would still be doing like the permanent certification, or do I do professional?
Correct. So if you graduated, you said that you graduated already and you have your provisional, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so all you're doing right now, Caitlin, is if you haven't found a job, you're looking for a job. You're going to get a job soon if you don't have one as a school counselor. You're going to do your hours, and then after you do your 2 years, you're going to apply for your permanent certification, and that's all you have to do.
Okay, so there are no like new requirements for the
There is
permanent.
no new requirements for
Okay.
for provisional and permanent people.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then I have, I'm going to pronounce this name wrong, and I apologize. Langisha Moore.
It's Lagisha, no problem.
Okay, Langisha. Okay.
No problem. I guess my concern, well, let me not go with concerns. This is question time. Because I am in an online school, Liberty University through Virginia.
Okay.
And they do follow K-CREP, all of the things. So at first it seemed like everything was fine. So I'm just concerned, like I started in 2020 and I I should be going into practicum next semester. And then the two, oh, so I actually won't finish. I'll finish.
No, you
No, I
won't, right?
won't
Because you're
finish.
going to do
Yeah, I'll
internship in the
finish in
fall.
2023. I'll finish
You,
in the,
yep.
yeah, in the
So
fall
basically, if you're not in internship, if you're not going to
now.
finish your internship by,
hmm
like for my students, if they're not going to finish their internship by this spring,
hmm
they've already been rolled over to the 23 standard, like to the new standards.
To the new standards. And then,
Yeah.
so can you like just clarify what's the difference in the, I'm not really clear
Yeah,
in
so
like,
the
what does
difference
that mean?
is that the internship has to be split, right? So you can't be at one site for your internship experience. You have to have two distinct experiences, one in K through 8 and
Mm-hmm.
one in 9 through 12. So that's one of them. The
Okay.
other difference is that, and if you're at Liberty, I'm pretty sure they pretty
Yeah,
much
we
have
already,
to.
yeah, it already has that.
Yeah.
Like we
And
have to
so
do
what's
the,
going to end up
Mhm.
happening for people who are not who are not in a registered program that's
Mhm.
in New York State, you're just going to
Mhm.
do it through the individual pathway, and you're just going to have to meet those particular standards for the individual pathway standards, which is the
Mhm.
core 8 standards, content areas, the internship experience, and then also the examination.
The exam. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. And then I have, is it Yino? Yolanda. Excuse me, Yolanda Zhang.
Yes. So I'm a second year student at Brooklyn College. I'm also the
Okay.
president of our Graduate School Counseling Association. So if anyone want to do like outreach and like pan New York stuff, please message me. My email is just my first name dot last name at gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat. Especially if there are any other CUNY schools, because I've been trying to reach out and I haven't, because I've been, I'm sorry for saying that. But my question is,
Okay.
you mentioned the exam, and
Mhm.
so like I'm not worried about like the course and the internship, because you know we're KCREP and
Yeah.
accredited by New York State. We got that
Mhm.
covered.
Mhm.
So you said the exam, because I'll be graduating in 2023. We have a 3-year
Yep.
program, 3-year cohort
Mhm.
program. So you're saying the exam may be available by then, but if it's not, then we are locked out and then we don't have to take it.
Yes. Yes. So you're going to be like, please,
Take your
you are
time
locked
making the
out.
best exam possible.
So it says, so if you look at the regulations, it'll say if applicable, right? So if it's available, you're going to be required to take it. If it's not available, then you're not required to take it.
Okay.
I've been told that they are really, that the plan is still early, like April, May 23, that it will be available, but anything is bound to change. So if it's not available for you to take, you don't have to worry about it. But if it is available for you to take, it will be a requirement for certification.
Right. Can you speak a little bit about the contents of it? Because I want to let my cohort know.
It would be the content. It would be what you're currently taking in your classes now. So if you're a KCREP accredited program, you have human development, you have theories, you have multicultural, you have career, you have ethics. All those things are going to be on this exam.
Got it.
Comprehensive school counseling program, things of that nature. So if you're KCREP, you understand what ASCA means.
Yeah.
And you buy into it, that's the kind of content that will probably be on there. But, once they're finished with it, there will be a guide that the state gives out, like a guidance document that the state gives out to programs.
Right. But if we are not, like, can I ask questions about possibly format rather than the content? Like,
no.
So we don't know if it's like how many days, how many hours, like multiple, no. When would NISCA like send an email about it when this
I will
occurs?
definitely, like, once I, because I'm involved in that, again, like I've been involved since the beginning, so I'm involved in that process. And so once the state says that it can, things can be shared, it will be shared. It will be shared. Trust me when I tell you, it will be shared by me, by I will get it into the hands of every single program, and it will be shared with NISCA as well, and we'll shoot it out to our members and students and all of that good stuff.
Okay. And
But I would say also, Yolanda, don't worry about that right now, because it might not happen, right? It might not happen during your time. So I would say proceed, learn your content, and be the best school counselor that you can be.
right. And so basically, let me just clarify. So I'm not going to ask about the content. I'm not going to ask about the format.
Okay.
So basically, if we graduate and it's available, when do we take it? Do we have to take it before we step into a school? Like, do you know about that? Like within 2 years?
It's related to initial certification. So you would need to take it. I do know this. It would be what is needed for initial certification.
Okay, so we need to pass this before we could start working in a school.
Probably so, unless they change the criteria. Probably so.
Okay, because if it comes out in April and May and we don't know the guidelines, there's only like 4 months before we could,
But again, Yolanda, I think you're jumping ahead.
Okay.
It's still in development. So I would say don't get hung up on it right now.
Yeah. If you could, if it does happen, is it possible to release it maybe 3 months before our graduation, so we would have time to prepare?
Yolanda, I promise you, I always look out for school counseling students. It's going to be very fair, and it's going to be equitable when it does get released. But again, don't get caught up on that yet, since it's still in development and we don't know all the particulars just yet.
Okay,
right?
got it.
So I would say just focus on learning your content, focus on being the best, focus on your role as a school counseling student and your training, and you will be fine no matter what happens. But their state is not going to all of a sudden say, you got to do it tomorrow. That's not how it's going to happen.
Yeah, I trust my program in teaching us the content. We're KCAP accredited. We have excellent professors and classmates. So that
I know
it's all like
there.
certain. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you're welcome. Let me have, I think it's this is the way that it appears on my screen. Is it Kajal?
Hi, yes, it's Kajal. And
Okay.
I have something very specific. So I started my program from NYU in 2019, but because of the pandemic, I had to take a gap year. And also at that point, we were told that the hours for practicum would be rolled into our the internship hours. So we had a total of 600 at that time. And what's communicated to me as someone who's graduating now in 2022, that because I was registered in 2019, my hours still roll down to 600. So is that okay for my license? Because I'm worried about acquiring my hours at this point, and how does that look for me?
So you're asking if the internship hours that you have obtained already are going to be acceptable for your provisional certification?
Yes, because I obviously could not get my practicum because everything had shut down and schools weren't allowing us to finish, our 8 practicum hours at that point. So I literally have 35, but at that point they had like the guidelines that came through to us was that everything is going to be rolled into one. It's going to be only 600 and not 700 based on, based on the whole pandemic and, the way you guys have been rolled into 2019. But now since I'm graduating in 2022, in May 2022, I was wondering if that's still applicable for me, or how does that look?
Okay, so whatever process that your college chose to do during when we were the high time of COVID, they've already registered everything with the state. And so there should be no issues in terms of you getting your provisional certification based upon the current standards right now for provisional and permanent certification. And so you don't have, so for this meeting, it's just really talking about the new regs. But since you're under the old regs, you shouldn't have too many obstacles in terms of the current the standards that you fall under for provisional and certification.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I have Shalonda. Holland.
Hi, I'm sorry. Hello.
Hey.
How are you? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning.
Yeah.
I'll say I am also a Liberty University student. Whoop, whoop. Anyway, I have a question about hours, right? So the current regulations, I just want to know how many hours do you have to have before you can apply for your provisional license?
There is none.
Can you hear me?
It's really whatever is the standard for your program, that's what's needed.
I know, but I'm talking about to apply for my provisional license with New York State.
Yeah. So New York State, so I'm going to put it, so if you look at Teach, and I'm going to put it in the chat, right? So maybe there's a little bit of misunderstanding. If you go to Teach, you will see, you will be able to go to types of certification or pathway of certification. And they will tell you, and in that, you will see what the requirements are for your provisional certification. So because, just because I know this information, although this is not what this is about, because because your program is not registered in New York State, you will be registering under the individual pathway. So whatever the individual pathway standards are, that's what you're going to have to follow. It does not, and so I would definitely say take a look at the Teach website and determine if you meet those particular standards or if you don't meet those particular standards. But typically, I would say that I think Liberty is KCREP accredited, correct?
It is KCREP accredited. So I'm in internship. I'm in spring. I'm going to be in internship too. But I just was under the impression, at least from my field supervisor here in New York, that once I finish internship 1, I should apply for my provisional because of the hour requirements. So that's what I was just trying to confirm. But you're just saying, look on the.
Yeah, I understand. So I'm going to give you guys something else too, where you can put in actually what you're looking for. There's no specific hours indicated for New York State under the provisional permanent certification pathway. So definitely take a look at that to determine if you meet all the other requirements for that. But there's no particular hours. They just say you have to have something, right? You have to have it complete. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Nicole Thomas.
Hi. Yeah, I think you answered it pretty much. I've just been listening to all the other questions, but basically I graduate in December and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, do I need to apply like right away? That's what it sounds like. Before I know I got a couple of years, but I feel like I need to do it now.
I would say, everyone's going to do it on their own time, but I would definitely be mindful of the time in which you apply because you don't, life happens, right? Sometimes things happen in our life and then we get sidetracked. So just be mindful of the time frame that you have in order so that you don't miss the window.
All right.
Once you miss it, you miss it.
So I should be able to do provisional at least, right?
Oh,
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? And if I've already answered your questions, if you can lower your hands, that would be great. So then I don't call on you again.
Dr. Walley, I am. Hi.
Oh, you're back. Hey, Corey.
I think Caitlin still has her hand up.
Okay, I answered a question from Caitlin. Okay, she's gone now. Any other questions? I think it's really about, one of the things that I think is really important is just kind of informing yourself and knowing where to find the information that you're looking for. And so in the chat, I can provide some additional regulation. I can provide the regulation information as well, so that you are much more empowered to get this information, to read it, and so that you are aware of what's needed as you're moving forward. So I'm putting this in the chat. There's a couple of information, especially I added something about the individual evaluation as it pertains to the new regulations. So this is only about the new regulations, not about the current regulations. If you are, like we had a couple of students from Liberty University or some other online program, if you're starting this semester, then you might want to definitely take a look at the individual pathway, individual evaluation, because that's definitely going to be where you fall in under the new regulations. But then, the certification for school counseling, that will apply to everyone else. So just be mindful and take a look at it and read up on it, so that you're much more informed and that you feel comfortable and that you don't hear it from other people. I find that when it's almost like telephone, you tell someone one thing and then by the time it gets to you, like the dog ate the paint or whatever, and that's not even what you started off with. And so if you just know the information for yourself from the source, then I think that you'll be much more empowered to know how you're going to navigate all of this stuff. Monique?
Sorry, yes. I had a question in regards to provisional.
I think I lost you, Monique.
On the one-way track, what would be the old track? So can you hear me? I'm driving.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. I applied for provisional because I'm graduating for 2022, May 2022. Now, let's say you're granted, I haven't been granted it, it's under review, but if you're granted provisional, you're able to take on jobs as long-term replacements or the position itself. Now, when do you become permanent? Do you have to reapply for permanency and pay a fee, or do you just become permanent after?
No, you have to apply for permanent certification after you complete two years of full-time employment as a school counselor.
Now, will there be new regulations for that too? Like, will the old people find
once you're once you have your provisional certification, you're going to stay with that. You have, it's good for 5 years, right? So you're going to stay with that until you get your permanent. And there's been and there hasn't been any time frame in which permanent is going to stop, right? At this point, for people who have their permanent provisional certification. So you can work under your provisional certification. So you will be working under your provisional certification until you get your permanent. But understand that's just in general, provisional, you can only work under provisional. You have 5 years and then you can renew it for a few more years. But then eventually you're going to have to get your permanent. So just be mindful about that for everyone, that you're not going to be able to work under your provisional forever. You're going to eventually have to transition over to a permanent certification. And if you don't, that's a whole nother thing that this session is not about. So just be mindful about that in general.
So one more question, sorry. With the okay, so if you have provisional, you have 2 years to get permanent, but let's say you don't find anything within the 5 years. Do you have to go back to school for anything, or?
You can, you're probably going to be able to renew that provisional certification, but then you're going to, and that sometimes that happens to people where they don't find anything, but they can renew for an additional, I think it's up to 5 years. But again, like we're talking so far in the future, I'm not sure about that part, but I know if you have your provisional now, it's good for 5 years. Okay. And it's not 2 years to get your permanent. You need 2 years worth of full-time experience as a school counselor to get your permanent. So if you have your provisional for the first 3 years and you didn't find employment, then the last 2 years you found employment, you can still get your permanent certification, right? So it's cumulative. It's not all or nothing, right? So if you did a year here and then the next year the leave replacement, you're not on that, and then you've got another kind of temporary school counseling position, then if it's for a year, that's your total of 2 years. So it's not consecutive. If you understand me, okay? Someone in the chat asked, is there COVID expedited certification for school counseling? Never heard of it before. So I'm gonna say no. Like it's still, think about what I'm very sensitive about this, especially now, kids need people who know their stuff. I wouldn't want anyone to slide on standards regardless. So I would want people to still have their certification and still go through the entire process in order to be a school counselor. So there is nothing that I've heard of in terms of any type of expediting certification because of COVID, especially now that things are reopened. I've never heard of that. And also, so any other questions? Someone asked about bilingual certification, although this is not what this is about. I think you really have to contact your program for that particular question about how do you apply for your bilingual certification. Definitely connect with your program of study because they might have a different process. So I'm not gonna touch that particular question.
We did have a question in direct message, wondering how you get involved. By the way, for all those that came late and I had to step away, I'm Corey Sussman, not Robert Rotunda. I am the NISCA Graduate Student Liaison. So I represent the graduate students. That's why we are hosting this webinar today. So how can you get involved? The best way to get involved is joining NISCA if you're not a NISCA member. It's $25 for graduate students. You could register either on our website, nisca.org, or while you're applying for your ASCA membership, you can also add that option for the state membership as well. But we recommend that you join NISCA. You join our webinars, our other webinars from different levels, like if you're interested in K through 6, middle school, high school. We have our regional directors who also host webinars and get-togethers throughout the region. So that's one of the best ways to get involved, joining NISCA. Coming to the state conference next year in Albany would be a great way. I met with 13, 14 graduate students that came to our session to talk. Then this, for those that joined us at the beginning, this is how this session came about, is talking about the changes that were coming through, how that was going to affect the graduate students. So being at the conference, we're able to really get the ball rolling. Having Dr. Walley at the conference also helped, being able to get in her ear right away and having her graciously agree to do this presentation. So that is a great way to get involved, showing up for the webinars. We're going to be hosting a few more throughout the year. I'm hopeful to do a webinar this coming either January or February for those who are graduating this year about the interview process. We had 250 registrants for that last year, and over 200 that came to that webinar. So that was a really awesome webinar. It lasted 2.5 hours. So we'll probably host that at night, not during the day. I'm also going to be sending out a survey, hopefully in the next week or two, finding out from graduate students about when is a better time to meet. We've heard different things from programs. I know this is typically a time where everyone's transitioning from either their practicum or their job to class at night. So before or after class. So we're trying to just get a better idea if doing something at like 9:30, 10 o'clock to 11:30 might be beneficial, or doing it at this time, which could be before class for many people. So that's the best way to get involved.
And then every year there's always grants to attend the conference. And so be on the lookout for that leadership grants that that NISCA provides. I think last year we were able to give 5 leadership grants to cover expenses to the conference. And so expenses and lodging. So it was really good. We got 5 really great people who want to be involved in NISCA doing and working with us in some of our committees. And so that's also an option too. But for today, I just kind of want to, if there's no additional questions, I just want to leave you with this. If you are graduating before 2022, so May, August, December 2022, there's nothing for you to do. There's no new regulations. There's no new standards. You're going to proceed as normal. If you are graduating in 2023, things have changed, and you're going to the certifications requirements have changed. There may be an examination that's going to be required for you to get your initial certification as well. So just be mindful, do not confuse the two as you're kind of going through your program. So again, if you're graduating in 2022, there's nothing for you to do. Proceed as normal. If you are graduating in 23, it's a little bit different. And so you need to be mindful and be aware of what's going to be required. If you're a member of NISCA, when things come out in terms of notices, you'll be notified. But also, if there is something that I think all programs should be aware of, then I'll also send, I have Corey, and we also have our VP of Counselor Educators, Hennessy, who will also be communicating with programs as well about any type of updates. So if there's no additional questions.
Well, I want to thank
you, Yolanda.
I want to thank Dr. Walley for taking your time to be here today and present this to you all, and to the general graduate students and our faculty members that may have joined us today as well. This is being recorded. It has been recorded and will be put up onto the NISCA YouTube page in the next couple of days, hopefully within the week. I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Walley. One of her last things she did before she turned over her presidency to our current president, Mark Mason, is that
what I do?
she put forward a resolution that gives all first year, is it all first year or all graduating? All graduating students from the state of New York, their first year of NISCA membership for free. That was something that was written into, it is approved by the board. It was one of the last things that she did. So I would like to thank her for doing that. For all that future graduates, we will all get our first year of NISCA membership on behalf of NISCA because of the efforts of Dr. Walley. So I think that's something that I appreciate, and hopefully moving forward that everyone else that's graduating from a New York school appreciates as well. So
you're welcome. And I want to give a shout out. I see a student and somebody that I know, Lisa Suzuki. Hi, Dr. Suzuki. And hi, Lisa Murray as well. And
so,
bye, everyone.
Yeah, goodbye, everyone. And if you stay on one more second, we don't have to record this. So if you want to stop the recording. That's great.
Yes.
We did have
All right.